good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the session. As the slide says there, my name's Laura. I'm one of the development officers working for Welsh Cycling, and I'm based in North Wales, so I don't think I know any of you personally, but welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to spend a bit of time discussing being an inclusive club with you all, kind of what that means, and then some practical tips and examples of how you can implement that into your own clubs. So as I go along, I'm going to chat through some of the slides. If you've got any questions or comments at all, please just stop me and just shout them out. I'll be happy and comfortable to do that, or pop them into the chat box, and I'll answer them as they pop up as best I can. So a little bit of an outline of what I'd like to cover with you all this evening. Firstly, what it actually means to be an inclusive club. So some of the elements of what you deliver, and how you can make some changes or improve some of the things you've already got going on within your club to make it a little bit more inclusive, and as inclusive as it can be, really. Secondly, to have a look at what the benefits are of delivering inclusively. So how you can benefit your club, your individuals, and the wider community that you're part of by having an inclusive approach. And then some of the examples that can support your club to be inclusive. Some of the support that's out there. There's loads and loads of webinars and workshops and courses and stuff that cover working inclusively. And lots of them look at the specific groups. So maybe that's disability, maybe that's the BME community. I'm going to speak quite broadly around inclusivity as a whole. So a lot of the things that I'll talk about can be applied to any of the groups that are out there, and we'll explore that a little bit more as we go. So just to get started, go ahead and shout out if you're happy to do so. When you see the word inclusion, what does it make you think of? Are there any words that kind of come to mind, what it means to you? And do you associate it with any particular groups of people? So any particular members of the community that you associate with the word inclusion with? Has anyone got any thoughts on that at all?
Well, to me, go on. To me, inclusion means everybody.
Yeah.
That's the word that springs to mind, everyone. So I don't think of any particular groups of people when I think of inclusion. I just think it means everyone.
Great. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I'm from Binya Cycling Club.
Cool.
In Llanelli. And I think the impression in the area is that we are only a racing club,
okay,
which is far from the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of that the outside impression to people that aren't part of the club, what they think of it, and then how you can kind of take some steps to maybe change that and to change that perception a little bit.
And even if you try and encourage people to come on a club run, the classic running at the pace of the slowest, people are fearful that it's going to be 20-mile-an-hour average.
Yeah. Some sort of stereotypical views that you get of cycling and club runs and that type of thing. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. So yeah, really good. Really glad you said that now.
Yeah, it's very much the angle that I'm coming from as well, because you know, I'm Towie Riders, so neighbouring club there to Alan, and you know, if looking back, you know, just over a year ago, Towie Riders was more Towie racing, very sort of, you know, competitive element to it, and you know, part of my mission since then, you know, I've introduced social runs on a Sunday rather than sort of like a 25-mile-an-hour chain gang.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, trying to get, you know, to me, inclusion is making it welcoming to anybody. If you want to ride a bike, you can come along. You're welcome.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I want to get at through as we go through these slides and through this chat. But yeah, I think everyone's kind of summed up really nicely. It's about everyone, and it's just about everyone having that opportunity. Yeah, I really like those answers. So I kind of try to summarise it as well, my thoughts of what it means to me. I feel like it means that regardless of any characteristic, which we'll come on to a little bit more, that your club allows everyone an equal chance to participate, which is what you've already shown examples of, and you have the opportunity to progress if you choose to. Inclusive clubs are open, friendly, and they're committed to helping everybody enjoy the benefits of cycling, and everyone has the chance to get involved. So as I kind of speak through this slide, I think we've touched on it already, really. Have a think about how inclusive your club is at the moment. Do you feel like you are welcoming and open to everyone? And does your membership kind of represent different areas of the community? And the answer might be that maybe it does, or maybe that there is a little bit more opportunity around being inclusive. And you definitely wouldn't be alone if you thought that there was an opportunity to grow and to have an even increased inclusive approach. We see lots of examples of inclusive practices within clubs, and inclusivity is achieved, but not always consistently. And that's what we kind of want to get to, that consistent achieving of it. We know that all clubs are at different stages of their efforts, and hardly anyone out there is kind of starting from scratch. Everybody is on that journey somewhere. So the definition kind of in that green arrow box there, it shows us it's about fairness, and it sets out the individual and the legal rights. So it states everyone should be treated fairly and have the equality opportunity to reach their potential. Being inclusive protects everyone from being discriminated against, being victim to any sort of harassment or victimization, and puts a kind of duty on all of us to stop anything unfair going on, and just stop that happening in the first place. So there is a little bit of a legal aspect that kind of underpins this inclusive thought, really, and that's the Equality Act from 2010. And it specifically prohibits discrimination based on what we call protected characteristics. And these have got to be taken into account when you're thinking about the club and what you can offer and the direction that you want to take it in. So the protected characteristics, they all have the potential to impact on whether someone is able to access your club or not. Does anybody have an idea what these might be? There is 9 of them, but if you've got a thought on what these protected characteristics are, just go ahead and shout them out.
I'm not going to get 9 of them, but I'll start off with age.
Yes. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Sexuality.
Yeah. Sexual orientation, that is one. Yeah, brilliant.
Gender.
Gender, yeah.
Ability. No.
Not so much protected one. Disability is. So that if you have a disability, then that obviously that feeds into that one. So yeah. Some of them are a little bit more obscure.
Additional needs.
What was that, sorry?
Additional needs.
Yeah, it's kind of feeds into the disability side of it as well. So yeah, additional learning needs maybe, or maybe more physical needs.
Race.
Yeah, race.
Poverty.
No, not in a sense, but yeah, it's definitely something to consider. It's not one of the 9.
It is for cycling though, isn't it? Because bikes are not cheap.
Absolutely, yeah. So the 9 here are laid out kind of in the law in the Equality Act. But yeah, I agree with you. You know, cycling, the stereotype of it can be seen very expensive and a bit elitist. And accessing that and breaking down those stereotypes is really important. So it's definitely well worth considering. Yeah, great point.
Religion.
Yes, religion. Yeah.
There can't be too many more.
Yeah, we're on the tough ones now.
Would
Right.
beliefs be separate to religion, or?
No, they put it in together. So religion and belief is one characteristic, but yeah. So I'll give you the list and put you out of the suspense. So it's age, we've said, disability, gender reassignment is one, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, we've said, religion or belief, sex and sexual orientation. So we covered loads of them, which was great that you kind of had an appreciation. And they obviously apply to all areas of society, and that includes our clubs. So that inclusive club, those 3 sort of statements in the white boxes, they're really, really key and really central to creating that inclusive environment. So having the meaningful provision of activity, whether that's coaching, whether that's as a participant, a volunteer within the club, if it's a meaningful experience and you're really part of the community of the club and really part of what it's about to offer. Being inclusive can be treating people the same, or it can even be treating people differently depending on if they have one of those characteristics that we've spoken about. And I'm going to come on to that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. But it's always centred on the individual. So as with all our coaching and with all of our offer, it's centred on what the individual needs and what the individual wants to get out of the experience of being part of the club or the ride or the session. So is it always treating people the same? And sometimes people think they're doing the right thing by treating everyone in the same way. I've got an image here. If we look at that picture, we can see that it doesn't always work. So in this case, everyone's been treated the same, been given the same size box. That's impacted on the experience of the people here. So the enjoyment and the meaningful provision isn't the same for all the individuals on that because they have been treated the same. And as we've said, it can be treating people the same or it can be treating people differently, but it's always centered on the needs of that individual. So I think that the image, it probably illustrates it probably better than I'm able to explain. But just by simply moving one of the boxes in the image, so a small change, that meaningful experience and that enjoyment is the same for everybody, and everyone's able to enjoy it in a kind of equal manner. So when thinking about inclusion, try focusing on the outcome that you want. So that might be everyone able to take part in the session, to be involved in the structure of the club, and you might need to do that differently for order for certain people to make that happen for them. And that's exactly what the picture shows, as we said, and we've treated everyone slightly differently, and everyone's got a meaningful experience and equal enjoyment out of it. So the fact that you've attended the session is great, and it shows that you're at the very least intrigued about being an inclusive club, and you're hopefully passionate about developing those inclusive practices, and as we've said, including everyone within the club environment. There's loads and loads of benefits to being inclusive, and to having that inclusive outlook. Has anybody got any ideas of what they might be? Anything in particular?
Oh, well, you're going to get increased the membership. Definitely,
yeah.
Increased participation.
Yeah. So increase that, within your community, you're offering more people the chance to take part. Definitely great. Anything else?
Yeah, for us, it's increased participation of existing members.
Okay, yeah.
Which I think is because it's relatively low because of the gaps in what we offer.
Mm-hmm. Great that you recognise that as well. So yeah, to have maybe a wider offer or to have maybe different things and yeah, include everybody. Any others at all?
Yeah, I think that variety leads to more enjoyment as well. Actually, there seems to be a better atmosphere in the club the more inclusive we get.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So yeah, the more people that are included, you get that kind of nice mix of personalities and different skills and stuff, and that creates like a great culture. Yeah. Really glad you said all them because there are a lot of the same thoughts that I had as well. So that positive club environment, as we've really, really nicely touched on. Being inclusive can create that positive environment. So where members appreciate each other, they learn from different experiences and different backgrounds. And the reason that somebody with one of those protected characteristics, so maybe, for example, a disabled member might want to access your club, will be exactly the same reasons as any other club member. It might be for the social aspect, need to get fitter, improve their skills. Maybe they've got family members already taking part and already members. And as we've said, that's going to increase your club membership. So just taking disability as one example, around 1 in 5 people in the UK have a disability, so fairly high. But in Wales, only 8% of our club members identify as having a disability. So just having that inclusive approach and you're welcoming different types of people with different experiences into the club, it's going to increase your membership, and that's got a whole world of benefits, as we know. The inclusive clubs understand and they address the needs of the community, so they attract more people to take part, and that's got a good and positive impact on the perception of the club, perception of the sport, encourages others to consider cycling, kind of breaks down some of those stereotypes that we've already touched on. Inclusive clubs have access to a wider sporting talent pool, so you might get more success within racing. I mean, whether that's at club level, regional level, or even beyond, you might unearth the next superstar because you're inclusive and somebody came along to one of your sessions. As with members, access to more volunteers, so a wider pool of volunteers to choose from, and to support the running of the club and to bring new ideas, new skills and expertise, so maybe new ways of working, new ideas, innovation, a fresh pair of eyes because they've come from a different background to what's currently part of the club, and they can just bring a different kind of perspective on it. We've got the social support networks, so being part of an inclusive club, as we said, is already great for the atmosphere and great for the environment. but it really can improve on somebody's sense of connection, getting to know a more diverse group and kind of helping them build broader social network and broader support networks. And then we've got the opportunity to create new role models. So if you have members and volunteers from different communities, from different groups, from maybe some of the protected characteristics, so maybe that's more females, whether that's more people that might identify as having a disability, that can act as a really positive role model for other people maybe within the club or outside of the club. If they see somebody like them having a really impactful role, then it's more likely to appeal to come and take part. And then those stereotypes. So inclusive clubs help to break down those stereotypes that something cycling could be elitist, or that it's all about club runs where it going at 20 miles an hour. It helps kind of break down that and welcome community groups in. So I've had a little look about what it means to be inclusive, and where taking an inclusive approach can really provide a big range of benefits. And I want to have a look at some of the actions that you can take or you can put into place to develop an inclusive environment or to improve that inclusive environment that you already have. So firstly, if you don't understand who your local community is, who it's made up of, kind of the needs of key groups, that can be a real barrier to being inclusive. You might not even know that you're doing it, but making assumptions about whether somebody will be interested in taking up cycling based on maybe a disability. And it will also limit your club's ability to attract new members. So before considering how to be more inclusive, ensure that your club has a good understanding of its current makeup. So who are your current members? And that will provide you with a great baseline. So if you want to progress and you want to measure where you're going with your inclusive approach, you've kind of got that baseline figure there. We see clubs use maybe questionnaires or maybe membership forms, diversity monitoring forms that you're probably all familiar with. And that helps them understand their demographic makeup. So how many females, if they have anyone that has a disability within the group, those types of things. You can also use the opportunity to speak to members about their views on different aspects of inclusivity, and understanding that makeup between your current club and the local community will help you see where the areas the club's doing well, who it represents, and any opportunities where you can then maybe focus your attention towards improving that outlook really. Secondly, do you have any links with any schools, any community groups, or any groups that target members with specific characteristics? So you might have young people's groups, maybe older people's groups, those types of things. And these relationships are a really good way to understand who is in your community, so you can get an idea if you're representative of them, and demonstrate that welcoming approach. So you can have an opportunity to go and visit these groups, maybe promote the club a little bit, invite people down to taster sessions to see if they like the environment and they feel like they're part of it. Does your club have good links with your local sports development team, and then specifically your disability officer? They can really help you understand your local community in greater depth. They can support you with training ideas and with expertise, with connecting you with certain groups if you want to target any approaches, and kind of just really be there to support. And then looking at that kind of green silhouette image at the bottom, it's about who are those people in your community where your club is, and are they represented in your club? So if you are one of those individuals and you want to join the club, do you see people like you there? Do you feel included because there's already people like you? Or are you going to be one of those kind of role models and positive influences that breaks that stereotype and breaks that barrier down and becomes part of the club and then fits into that kind of silhouette image? If those people are already represented in your club, that's great. And if they're not represented, what might be a potential barrier from stopping them engaging? Is there anything there that they would see that doesn't suit them, or isn't suitable for them to be a part of? And we will come on to some of these barriers in a little bit. So a truly inclusive club is going to feel welcoming to everyone, and that's going to be at every stage from their member journey. So when they first hear about the club, that first impression, through to joining and being a long-standing member. So the first impression that the potential new member has in your club will really impact on whether they think it's somewhere that they'd like to be, or they'd like to stay and learn more. Clubs that aren't as inclusive in their welcome, their club environment, where that atmosphere isn't maybe feeling like they are included or they can't see themselves there, they might feel like it's not for them, and they're going to choose to stop that journey pretty quickly and probably not take it any further. So if your club has a website or public social media page, what things would I see on there if I'm a potential member? So I'm just browsing, and what kind of things am I going to see? Am I going to see people like me, or am I going to see what I think is kind of a stereotype? Am I going to see pictures of club runs, as we use that example, or am I going to see maybe a bit more of an inclusive maybe approach? Is it easy to find out about the club? Are contact details available? Are they up to date? I don't want to be contacting somebody that, the previous secretary or the previous chair who is no longer with the club. Is it the right person? Am I going to land in their inbox? And someone going to respond kind of in a timely manner, or on social media, if I send a message, is someone going to get back to me? So how easy is it to find out? And if I get answers to my questions, I'm probably going to be more inclined to find out more. Can newcomers come and visit a session? So will you be informed of who you're going to meet? Maybe have the opportunity to discuss any extra requirements that you might have. So you may be bringing your child to a Go Ride session, and your child has maybe a mild learning difficulty. Will you have the opportunity to kind of let the coaches know about that, anything extra that they might need in place, and just so people are aware that that's what the situation is really. If you have someone new show interest in the club and they come along for a visit, do they get any kind of material to take away with them? So you might have a small welcome pack, or you might direct them to a page on the website where you've got information for potential new members, and you're going to kind of read that and going to build that perception and that atmosphere of what the club's about, and it's all going to help to be creating that inclusive environment. And then lastly, do you have access to any accessible equipment? So obviously very disability specific at this point, but adaptive cycling uses equipment that is obviously adapted, and it enables the individual to take part in the sport. So the way that people adapt their disability is a really individualised process. No two cyclists with the same disability will require the exact same modifications. So it's important to kind of work with the individual and determine what they need to be able to take part and to have the best experience and that meaningful provision. And I hear lots and lots of concern when I work with clubs that if they promote themselves as inclusive and they create this great inclusive environment, and they kind of share that with the wider world through Facebook and social media and their website and stuff, that they're going to get an influx of wheelchair users turn up to their session at the weekend. And in experience, that is really, really unlikely to happen. You're more likely to get friends and siblings maybe of current members come along, but also that previous visit where you invite someone to come along and have a look at a session, that's going to come into play there. So it's giving you the chance to prepare. And there's also plenty of support available around borrowing adaptive equipment if it's required, what types of things are out there, and small changes that you can make to create that inclusive environment with the equipment. Anybody got any questions so far?
No, that's fine.
No? Cool.
Yep.
Great stuff. So another really powerful tool that we have when we're showing that our club is inclusive and creating that perception of inclusivity to the outside world is our inclusive marketing and communications. So being an inclusive marketing, using that as a tool, that avoids targeting particular demographics or relying on those stereotypes, which might make some people feel excluded if they see a picture and they don't feel like they're going to be part of that. So through the use of inclusive imagery, language, marketing and communications, you can really help to communicate that the club is welcoming and it's open to everyone. And that will be a really important indicator of the importance that the club places on inclusion and reflects really nicely the club culture. So it's really likely that when you're doing some marketing or you're sharing information about the club, that you're going to be using some images and some photos. It has to be with people already in the club, and when you're trying to appeal to that wider community that you want to represent and show that you're an inclusive environment. You might be showcasing what you've got on offer or the sessions that you have. It's really important to think about how the images will be interpreted and if they appeal to the communities that you're trying to include. So all the images on this slide, they're great examples of showing an inclusive session and showing inclusivity within cycling. However, some are better than others, and it would depend on what your point is and what your message you want to get across is. So if there is a specific level of ability that's required for a session, make sure that's reflected in any photos. So if you're advertising an inclusive go ride session, so likely everyone is going to be on traditional two-wheeler bikes, probably very few, if any, adapted equipment or bikes. It's just an inclusive session that everyone is welcome to take part in. You're really unlikely to use this image of the Team GB on the tandem here, because that's not what your session's about. It's about community stuff, it's about club. It's not about that yet. That's something that people can aspire to, but it's not showing what your session's about. Use images as well that demonstrate inclusion rather than separateness. So we've also got a picture on the top there of a group of people on adapted bikes. So it's a great image, really powerful image of showing a disability specific session, but it doesn't necessarily show an inclusive session. It shows everybody on an adapted bike, and it kind of doesn't give the perception and the image that it's for everyone. It looks like it's for disabled people, and that's great if you are promoting a disabled session. But if you're promoting an inclusive session, you're probably going to want to picture more like the one in the top middle, where we've got a range of different people, different types of bikes, different needs, and it just shows that everyone's welcome, and it kind of gives that feeling, a nice perspective there.
I'm frequently overtaken by people on e-bikes. Is that would that be categorised as an adapted bike?
Not necessarily. I think when we use the term adapted, we use something that is adapted to support someone that has a specific need. So it could be, but I think a lot of the time people with e-bikes maybe don't have a specific disability or a specific need to use them. It's more of a choice. In some circumstances, yeah, maybe if it was used by someone with a disability. But I think in general, we probably wouldn't put them into that category.
Because there's somebody in our club with sort of asthma, and previously very good cyclist. Now he's bought an e-bike and can come on club runs.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Process something we ought to offer and promote. Yeah,
I love that as well, because that's made an intervention with the physical equipment and is now able to join in with everyone else. And it's that's a great example of kind of inclusivity and having that opportunity to be involved with quite a small change. Really like that example. So kind of inclusive marketing, and especially around the language and the images, this could be an entire webinar or kind of workshop in itself. The main point is that the terminology and the language used when you're marketing the club should be inclusive. So the example on the slide here is around disability and language that you use, language that we maybe wouldn't use. There's lots of outdated terms that aren't commonly accepted, a bit less politically correct in the year 2021. Although sometimes we do still hear them in certain environments. Just think about how, if you heard these types of words, how that could reflect on the club if it's used in an official context. So if you used it on your website, or in a Facebook post, or a coach used it within a session, how that would make somebody feel if they heard it. Language has a really big impact on our sense of belonging in all environments. So if you use a word or a term that may not be appropriate, you might instantly kind of stop that relationship with an individual in the club. They might see it as a place not for them, because that environment isn't right and the culture isn't what they seem to be inclusive in the club. And the consistency is important as well. So kind of keeping the consistent use of good language. Got some good examples up there about headlines and the way you can write. And it's about ensuring that people are just seen to be part of the club. Part of sessions, part of rides, rather than something extra, just part of being included. And that's what we've said all the way through this. So becoming a more inclusive club often requires a bit of a shift in thinking. And with that comes a shift in club culture. So we've said about that club environment where it's got a nice feel-good factor about it because you've got lots of different types of people, lots of different ideas, and you reflect that community which you're part of. And that does come down to your club culture. So inclusive coaching is another topic which could be an entire workshop in itself. I'm just going to touch on it a little bit, but there's plenty more information out there on inclusive coaching. And inclusive coaching means adapting and modifying coaching practices and activities to ensure that everyone, regardless of their age, their gender, ability level, with disability, maybe their ethnic background, ensures that they've got the opportunity to participate if they want to. So good coaches can adapt and they can modify aspects of the coaching to create that welcoming environment for everyone. And inclusive coaching isn't necessarily about having special skills or any particular knowledge. It's about any of the communities that you might work with. The basic skills of good coaching, as we all know, is when applied with an inclusive philosophy, it can be suitable for anyone, and it just becomes a natural part of coaching. There's loads and loads of resources, as I said, workshops, support from organisations out there that can help volunteers develop their insight and confidence when kind of dealing with different groups. And then linked into inclusive coaching, we've got inclusive leadership and governance. So club committee members have lots of power. They can make decisions. They can prioritise what projects they feel are important for the club and what direction they'd like to go in. And they can take actions that affect lots of people and lots of members. So these kind of people in leadership positions, they can have significant influence on the culture of the club and their ownership and commitment to inclusive club practices. They will be the people that will kind of make things happen in terms of inclusive club plans and initiatives, which can have a really big impact on how they're embraced. So if you get that buy-in from leaders, from your committee, from coaches, it's really likely to have a bigger impact and have a wider reach within your club environment. It's therefore really important to make sure that everyone in these sort of positions, or your volunteers, your workforce, has a good understanding of inclusion and how they can support within their role to make it inclusive, because it comes down to all individual roles as well. So you might want to support your committee members or your coaches and your general workforce to understand their specific role, how they can take action and make any changes towards making things inclusive. And that might be formal training, but it's more likely to be quite informal, meetings, chatting through different aspects and different ideas, and getting to discuss key points and actions. You might want to create an inclusive plan. So as part of your development plan or your development programme, you might want to feed in some inclusivity actions. Or you might want to create an inclusive club statement. So there are clubs out there that have their commitment to inclusion recorded in a kind of inclusion statement. And that's just about everything that we've spoken about, really underpinning that everybody is welcome within the club. If you have a statement like that, it kind of encourages members to buy into it, to be a part of it, that they're part of the drive towards inclusion, and to also call out anything that's non-inclusive. So if they see something that they don't feel is right, maybe to have that confidence to say, I don't think that was an inclusive idea. You might want to create a simple inclusivity guide, so maybe a form of a couple of FAQs on a page, and that's going to be really useful for volunteers when they're referring to new members. Maybe you get someone turn up to your session for the first time, just around the types of things that your club does. When I come on to some of the resources on the next slide, there are examples of templates of everything that I've said about, so it's not something that you have to go away and create yourself or anything like that. You can adapt and adopt a different template for your club. It's kind of all there and it's done. You can make the changes that you see is fit and appropriate. And if you do have these sort of things, so you can share your club plans on your website, on your social media, on your Facebook page, and your public kind of facing stuff. And it just serves as a nice reminder as your club's commitment to being an inclusive environment. If you do develop anything like that, so you decide to develop some inclusion plans separately, you might want to consider what inclusive leadership means to your club and why it's really important. So what steps might you take towards having a diverse and inclusive leadership group? You might want to consider appointing an inclusion officer, somebody that may already be in your workforce, on your committee. And that person can really be a real inclusion champion. So they can be a kind of focal point, and it might be more than one person. You might share this role around a few different individuals, just to have that kind of that focal central point of call for people, and a driving force behind that club culture. As we've already said, making use of positive imagery, really important step in developing inclusive club culture. It shouldn't be underestimated at all. So making use of a variety of positive images. So if you've got great images of sessions going on where you've got loads of different people from different areas of the community, or just people, loads of people joining in, make use of that. Grab a picture and you can use that on your marketing and on your social media and your website and things like that. Those sort of things are going to show that you're challenging stereotypes, and you're not doing the stereotypical things that people may associate with cycling clubs. And it will encourage the club to consider diversity as part of its kind of overall culture. And then create your role models. So if you've got individuals within the club that maybe are comfortable and happy to, get them to share their experiences. If they come from one of those protected groups, or they've got experience of working with those groups through coaching or in other methods, and make those people ambassadors, make them role models to help break down those stereotypes. So if the next new person that comes along sees somebody that they identify with, and they're similar to them from a similar background, or have similar experiences, or something happened to them that's they can relate to, that's going to be a great way of doing it. Those champion those experiences, really kind of make the most of those people. So you're obviously not expected to do all this work and implement loads of new policies, or to write an inclusion statement, or create an action plan, or to recruit a inclusion champion, or any of that kind of stuff on your own. There's loads of support out there. I've listed some of the organisations and some of the resources that are available and that can help you. So obviously Welsh cycling staff, development officers, the Go Ride coaches, and lots of other members of the workforce, we're more than happy to support if you've got specific questions around cycling, whether that's around equipment or individuals, or different ideas around coaching. We've got Disability Sport Wales development officers, so this is obviously a specific one for any disability support or questions. There's an officer in each local authority, usually based within the council, and they can support with programs like InSport that you might have heard of, or you might already be a part of. And they give you some structure towards your inclusive approach with disability. That, as we've said, the kind of steps that you take, they can be applied to any group, or just inclusivity as a general concept. We've got LGBT Sport Cymru and BME Sport Cymru, and they also focus on the specific areas that they say. But again, loads of support there if you're working with different members of the community, or you just want to know how you might challenge a stereotype or break down a barrier that people from those backgrounds might experience. More than happy to help you with them. And then the second two there are more around resources. Oh, sorry, local authorities, sports development teams, just missed that one out there. Those people will have access to community groups, maybe to funding. So if you're looking at a certain project around targeting a group, or to start a new session that might be welcoming for beginner women, or anything like that, your local authority team are the people that you're going to want to speak to and get a bit of support from them. And then the bottom two on the slide there, Club Solutions, a great resource, so online website, and that's where you find all your templates. So if you want to look at creating an inclusion statement, that's where you can find an example and you can adopt it, and you can change the bits that you will see fit and that's relevant to the club. If you want to appoint a inclusion champion, or you want to kind of recruit for an inclusion champion, there's role profiles on there for the types of activities that that person might do, and just kind of support with that recruitment process and give some idea and structure to what that looks like. And then UK Coaching on there as well. So that's a organisation that provide workshops, that provide training materials, maybe with specific areas. So you might be interested in coaching individuals with autism, or maybe coaching someone with a hearing impairment, or you might just be interested in different approaches you can take to coaching. A big range of resources on there, loads of different bits and pieces, so well worth having a look through if you feel like it might be useful. And that's kind of all the content that I wanted to cover. So thanks for listening. Really appreciate your time. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to fire away. I'll do my best to answer. Also put my email address and phone number on there as well. So if anything comes to you later on and you'd like to get a bit more information or learn a little bit more about anything that I've spoken about, then please feel free to drop me a message, and more than happy to help. Have we got any questions at all?
Nothing from me, thanks, Laura.
No problem.
I'm okay, thanks.
No, I hope you found it useful. Just some ideas maybe to take forward, and just maybe just stimulate thought a little bit around different things that you might be able to do.
It's covered a lot of useful points for us, because we are trying to increase participation of our members. So food for thought there. Thank you. Great, really good to hear.
We've had some real success in increasing our female membership.
Brilliant.
The last 2 or 3 years, we went from about 5% women in our club to now 40% in a 3-year period. So a massive change, actually. And the club has changed enormously as a consequence of that, and for the better too. We've still got work to do. So yeah, a bit of food for thought today. So thank you for the session.
Good.
What sort of things did you do, Keith, to increase the female membership?
Well, the key thing we did is we identified a real champion, somebody who was a really good communicator, actually a pretty good cyclist. And she had the time, and what we did is we advertised women-only sessions. They were 6-week sessions, but they were short sessions, and they were designed to increase people's confidence on a bike. So many of the people hadn't gone out with other folk and ridden in this group. So people were worried about cycling in a group. They were worried about their ability to stay within that group, and they lacked a lot of knowledge, actually. So they had a kind of 6-week individual, 1 hour a week taster session with our champion. And then we had members joining that group after 2 or 3 weeks. People like myself and other colleagues joined that group and spoke to them more about being a member of the club and how we could support them on the journey from just going from a women's only group to coming into that club environment. And that's pretty much what we've done, really.
Okay, thanks.
So when you say you were then joining that group, were you joining them to ride or just for a chat before they said?
Absolutely to ride. Because that's the conversation took place cycling alongside somebody. That's really where we felt the communication was best. People seem to be more relaxed when they're on their bike, and you can pull up alongside them, or they pull up alongside you, and then you just have a chat about whatever it is that you want to talk about, really. But the amount of people who came on the taster sessions and then came along to be part of the club, I was amazed at the conversion rate, really. Nearly 50%, so delighted.
Great example as well of using that champion, somebody who's passionate and really keen to be involved, has kind of driven that process, and then using those informal opportunities, like you say, going along to a session, riding alongside someone. That's where you're going to get the greatest conversation in that nice relaxed informal environment rather than too formal or sit down. So yeah, I really like that example. Really thank you for sharing that. Really good.
One of my challenges now is something that Alan mentioned, which is getting club members used to people on power assisted bikes. There seems to be a bit of reluctance among some members that we go down that route, but I'm convinced that if people want to use any type of bike they want, then why not?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of work we've got to do now in that area, I think.
Great stuff. Yeah, just about that, including people. Really like that you're keen to do that. Really positive approach.
Did you say you're going to send the presentation to us, Laura?
Yeah, if you'd like me to, no problem. I can send it to you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes,
do
please.
That. Yeah, great. And then anything else that you think of, you think of any questions later on that kind of pop up and you want to discuss through, or any ideas that you have that you want to kind of get another opinion on, then yeah, please just do get in touch.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you joining.
Well, thank you, Laura.
Enjoy your evenings.
Yeah, and you.